This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Katie Anderson. Erewhon by Samuel Butler. Chapter 6. Into Erewhon. And now I found myself on a narrow path which followed a small water-course. I was too glad to have an easy track for my flight, to lay hold of the full significance of its existence. The thought, however, soon presented itself to me that I must be in an inhabited country, but one which was yet unknown. What then was to be my fate at the hands of its inhabitants? Should I be taken up and offered as a burnt offering to those hideous guardians of the past? It might be so. I shuddered at the thought, yet the horrors of solitude had now fairly possessed me, and so dazed was I, and chilled, and woebegone, that I could lay hold of no idea firmly amid the crowd of fancies that kept wandering in upon my brain. I hurried onward, down, down, down. More streams came in. Then there was a bridge, a few pine logs thrown over the water, but they gave me comfort, for savages do not make bridges. Then I had a treat such as I can never convey on paper, a moment perhaps the most striking and unexpected of my whole life. The one I think that, with some 3 or 4 exceptions, I would most gladly have again were I able to recall it. I got below the level of the clouds, into a burst of brilliant evening sunshine. I was facing the northwest, and the sun was full upon me. Oh, how its light cheered me! But what I saw! It was such an expanse as was revealed to Moses when he stood upon the summit of Mount Sinai, and beheld that promised land which it was not to be his to enter. The beautiful sunset sky was crimson and gold, blue, silver, and purple, exquisite and tranquilizing. Fading away therein were plains, on which I could see many a town and city, with buildings that had lofty steeples and rounded domes. Nearer beneath me lay ridge behind ridge, outline behind outline, sunlight behind shadow, and shadow behind sunlight, gully and serrated ravine. I saw large pine forests and the glitter of a noble river winding its way upon the plains, also many villages and hamlets, some of them quite near at hand, and it was on these that I pondered most. I sank upon the ground at the foot of a large tree and thought what I had best do, but I could not collect myself. I was tired out, and presently, feeling warmed by the sun and quieted, I fell off into a profound sleep. I was awoke by the sound of tinkling bells, and looking up I saw 4 or 5 goats feeding near me. As soon as I moved, the creatures turned their heads toward me with an expression of infinite wonder. They did not run away, but stood stock still, and looked at me from every side as I at them. Then came the sound of chattering and laughter, and there approached 2 lovely girls of about 17 or 18 years old, dressed each in a sort of linen gabardine, with a girdle round the waist. They saw me. I sat quite still and looked at them, dazzled with their extreme beauty. For a moment they looked at me, and at each other in great amazement. Then they gave a little frightened cry, and ran off as hard as they could. "So that's that," I said to myself as I watched them scampering. I knew that I'd better stay where I was and meet my fate, whatever it was to be, and even if there was a better course, I had no strength left to take it. I must come into contact with the inhabitants sooner or later, and it might as well be sooner. Better not to seem afraid of them, as I should do by running away and being caught with a hue and a cry tomorrow or next day. So I remained quite still and waited. In about an hour I heard distant voices talking excitedly, and in a few minutes I saw the 2 girls bringing up a party of 6 or 7 men, well armed with bows and arrows, and pikes. There was nothing for it, so I remained sitting quite still, even after they had seen me, until they came close up. Then we all had a good look at one another. Both the girls and men were very dark in color, but not more so than the South Italians or Spaniards. The men wore no trousers, but were dressed nearly the same as the Arabs, whom I have seen in Algeria. They were of the most magnificent presence, being no less strong and handsome than the women were beautiful, and not only this, but their expression was courteous and benign. I think they would have killed me at once if I had made the slightest show of violence, but they gave me no impression of their being likely to hurt me so long as I was quiet. I am not much given to liking anybody at first sight, but these people impressed me much more favorably than I should have thought possible, so that I could not fear them as I scanned their faces one after another. They were all powerful men. I might have been a match for any one of them singly, for I have been told that I have more to glory in the flesh than in any other respect, being over 6 feet and proportionately strong. But any two could have soon mastered me, even were I not so bereft of energy by my recent adventures. My colour seemed to surprise them most, for I have light hair, blue eyes, and a fresh complexion. They could not understand how these things could be. My clothes also seemed quite beyond them. Their eyes kept wandering all over me, and the more they looked the less they seemed able to make me out. At last I raised myself upon my feet, and leaning upon my stick, I spoke whatever came into my head to the man who seemed foremost among them. I spoke in English, though I was very sure that he would not understand. I said that I had no idea what country I was in, that I had stumbled upon it almost by accident, after a series of hairbreadth escapes, and that I trusted they would not allow any evil to overtake me now that I was completely at their mercy. All this I said quietly and firmly, with hardly any change of expression. They could not understand me, but they looked approvingly to one another, and seemed pleased, so I thought, that I showed no fear nor acknowledgment of inferiority, the fact being that I was exhausted beyond the sense of fear. Then one of them pointed to the mountain in the direction of the statues, and made a grimace in imitation of one of them. I laughed and shuddered expressively, whereon they all burst out laughing too, and chattered hard to one another. I could make out nothing of what they said, but I think they thought it a rather good joke that I had come past the statues. Then one among them came forward and motioned me to follow, which I did without hesitation, for I dared not thwart them. Moreover, I liked them well enough, and felt tolerably sure that they had no intention of hurting me. In about a quarter of an hour we got to a small hamlet built on the side of a hill, with a narrow street and houses huddled up together. The roofs were large and overhanging. Some few windows were glazed, but not many. Altogether the village was exceedingly like one of those that one comes upon in descending the less known passes over the Alps on to Lombardy. I will pass over the excitement which my arrival caused. Suffice it, that though there was an abundance of curiosity, there was no rudeness. I was taken to the principal house, which seemed to belong to the people who had captured me. There I was hospitably entertained, and a supper of milk and goat's flesh with a kind of oat cake was set before me, of which I ate heartily. But all the time I was eating I could not help turning my eyes upon the 2 beautiful girls whom I had first seen, and who seemed to consider me as their lawful prize, which indeed I was, for I would have gone through fire and water for either of them. Then came the inevitable surprise at seeing me smoke, which I will spare the reader, but I noticed that when they saw me strike a match, there was a hubbub of excitement, which, it struck me, was not altogether unmixed with disapproval. Why, I could not guess. Then the women retired, and I was left alone with the men, who tried to talk to me in every conceivable way, but we could come to no understanding except that I was quite alone, and had come from a long way over the mountains. In the course of time they grew tired, and I very sleepy. I made signs as though I would sleep on the floor in my blankets, but they gave me one of their bunks with plenty of dried fern and grass, onto which I had no sooner laid myself than I fell fast asleep, nor did I awake till well into the following day, when I found myself in the hut, with 2 men keeping guard over me, and an old woman cooking. When I woke the men seemed pleased, and spoke to me as though bidding me good morning in a pleasant tone. I went out of doors to wash in a creek which ran a few yards from the house. My hosts were as engrossed with me as ever. They never took their eyes off me, following every action that I did, no matter how trifling, and each looking toward the other for his opinion at every touch and turn. They took great interest in my ablutions, for they seemed to have doubted whether I was in all respects human like themselves. They even laid hold of my arms and overhauled them, and expressed approval when they saw that they were strong and muscular. They now examined my legs, and especially my feet. When they desisted, they nodded approvingly to each other, and when I had combed and brushed my hair, and generally made myself as neat and well arranged as circumstances would allow, I could see that their respect for me increased greatly, and that they were by no means sure that they had treated me with sufficient deference, a matter on which I am not competent to decide. All I know is that they were very good to me, for which I thanked them heartily, as it might well have been otherwise. For my own part, I liked them and admired them, for their quiet self-possession and dignified ease impressed me pleasurably at once. Neither did their manner make me feel as though I were personally distasteful to them, only that I was a thing utterly new and unlooked for, which they could not comprehend. Their type was more that of the most robust Italians than any other. Their manners were also eminently Italian.